On the morning of February 20, 1962, the world held its breath. A towering, powerful rocket was poised on its launch pad at Cape Canaveral. The mission: to send an American astronaut, John Glenn, into space. He would orbit the Earth 3 times. But it wasn't just the astronauts who would make history that day. There was another quiet, resolute figure whose work had been vital to the success of the mission. Her name was Katherine Johnson. Katherine sat at her desk in a small, segregated office at NASA's Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. Around her, the sound of typewriters clacking, phones ringing, and the shuffle of papers filled the air. But it was the quiet hum of her mind that was most crucial. Johnson, a brilliant mathematician, had been tasked with calculating the trajectory for Glenn's flight, the same type of calculation that would send astronauts to the moon and beyond. In that moment, as she ran the numbers one final time, she knew something the rest of the world didn't. She was about to change history. Born in 1918, Katherine Johnson grew up in the segregated South, where her extraordinary intellect set her apart from an early age. The daughter of a teacher and a lumberman, she was always encouraged to pursue education. Her natural gift for mathematics earned her a place at West Virginia University, where she became one of the first African American women to attend graduate school. Yet despite her remarkable talents, it wasn't until she joined NASA, then known as NACA, that her calculations would play a pivotal role in space history. At the time, the race to space was as much a race for national pride as it was a scientific endeavor. The Cold War had cast a long shadow, and the United States was locked in fierce competition with the Soviet Union. Each space achievement was a victory not only for science but for the ideological struggle between East and West. In this tense, high-stakes environment, the success of America's space program hinged on the brilliance of a few, and Katherine Johnson was one of those few. On that fateful day in February 1962, Johnson's role was critical. John Glenn, a decorated Marine Corps pilot, was the first American to orbit the Earth, but there was a problem. As Glenn prepared for launch, he became increasingly anxious. He trusted the engineers and astronauts who had trained him, but there was one thing he didn't trust: the computer that had been used to verify his flight path. In a moment of rare vulnerability, Glenn asked for the human computers to double-check the calculations. The person who would verify those numbers was none other than Katherine Johnson. As she methodically rechecked the trajectory calculations, she knew the mission's success depended on her accuracy. Glenn's flight was about to make history, and she had no room for error. With the precision of a seasoned mathematician, she confirmed that the calculations were correct. Glenn was given the go-ahead, and the mission launched successfully. As Glenn orbited the Earth, Katherine Johnson's name remained known only to a select few at NASA, but her contribution was indispensable. That moment was a turning point not just for Johnson but for the entire space program. Glenn's successful orbit marked a significant achievement in the race to the moon. Yet for Katherine, it was the culmination of years of dedication, working in a segregated, male-dominated field where women of color were often invisible. But Johnson's story doesn't end there. It had taken her years to be acknowledged for her contributions. In 1962, she was still fighting against barriers of race and gender. Johnson was one of the first African American women hired by NASA, and she faced the dual challenges of being both black and a woman in a time when such identities were seen as obstacles to success in science and engineering. Despite the discrimination, Johnson's talent and perseverance stood out. She became an integral part of the team that helped launch astronaut Alan Shepard into space, America's first manned spaceflight. She calculated the flight paths that would eventually lead to the moon, using complex equations that required an understanding of physics and geometry beyond the scope of the era's computers. Her achievements were not limited to the time before Glenn's flight. In the years that followed, Johnson continued to make groundbreaking contributions to the field of aerospace engineering, working on the Apollo missions and later, the Space Shuttle program. Her trajectory calculations were integral to the success of these missions, which paved the way for humanity's first steps on the moon. Though she was overshadowed by the media's focus on the astronauts and engineers, Johnson's role in the Apollo missions is undeniable. In fact, it was only years later that the world began to recognize the enormous impact she had on space exploration. When NASA declassified many of its documents in the 1970s, it became clear that Johnson's calculations were at the heart of some of the most significant space missions in history. For years, Katherine worked in the background, quietly contributing to one of humanity's most ambitious endeavors. But in the 21st century, she was finally celebrated for her genius. In 2015, President Barack Obama awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, one of the highest honors in the United States. At the ceremony, Obama said, Katherine Johnson refused to be limited by her gender or her race. And her math made all the difference. The story of Katherine Johnson is one of triumph, but it's also one of struggle. She had to navigate the oppressive forces of racism and sexism that plagued her career, but her remarkable intellect and perseverance enabled her to overcome those challenges. She was part of a generation of women, particularly African American women, who fought for a seat at the table. And in doing so she made space history possible. Her legacy isn't just about numbers or space missions. It's about the doors she opened for those who would come after her. It's about showing the world that brilliance knows no boundaries, and that sometimes the most groundbreaking achievements are made by those who are overlooked or underestimated. Katherine Johnson proved that intellect is not defined by skin color or gender but by the determination to keep going, even when the odds are stacked against you. Today, as we look up to the stars, we remember that humanity's journey to space was made possible by countless individuals whose stories have been hidden in the shadows. Katherine Johnson's story is one of many, but it is one of the most extraordinary. Her work was integral to the Apollo missions that sent men to the moon and beyond. She was a pioneer, a trailblazer, and a symbol of the strength that comes from defying expectations and breaking barriers. As the world moved forward into the next chapter of space exploration, Katherine Johnson's legacy became a touchstone for future generations of mathematicians, engineers, and scientists. She demonstrated that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one person can change the course of history. Her story reminds us that the road to progress is often paved with challenges, but it is also illuminated by the light of determination and excellence. In a world where the next frontier is the stars themselves, Katherine Johnson stands as a testament to the power of one person's contributions to something far greater than themselves. She helped calculate a path to the moon, but in doing so she also calculated a path to the future. A future where anyone, no matter their background, can dream of reaching for the stars. And so, as we stand on the threshold of new space discoveries, let us remember Katherine Johnson. Her work continues to resonate in every rocket launch, every satellite in orbit, and every new mission that pushes the boundaries of human exploration. She was not just a mathematician, she was a pioneer whose calculations helped guide humanity to the stars. If you were inspired by the story of Katherine Johnson, her legacy, and the incredible people who shape our world of space exploration, don't forget to subscribe. Together, we can continue to uncover the untold stories of science, discovery, and human perseverance. The stars are within our reach, and with every new story we draw closer to them.